Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today, I'm going to teach you how to breed blue-eye forktails. Hello, I'm so glad to be back. I'm so glad to be making this video. I am so excited because I have had such success with these little creatures that I really wanted to share it with you guys. So let's get started. The blue-eye forktail, a lovely little nano fish, comes from Papua New Guinea. They are very small, very similar to your neon tetra. I think that they're way cooler. I mean, neon tetras are cool. Like, let's be real, neon tetras are awesome. However, these guys, fun to breed, easy to breed, and are quite active, just like your neon tetras, and are very, very fun to have. I love their coloring too. So if you are looking for something a little bit different, not so much blue, not too much red, and you're looking for a bit of yellow in your life, these guys are it. Plus they have some really amazing, beautiful blue eyes. So these guys live for about 2 to 3 years, and they're okay in a range of different temperatures as well. You don't have to keep them too warm to be successful in breeding them, which I think is great. It also makes them a really, really great beginner fish. For anyone who's starting out and wanting to get into more egg scattering fish, these ones are a really good one to start with. I'm going to take you through a whole bunch of steps on what I went from beginning to end on how I bred them, how I'm keeping them, and of course all the different ways to look after them. I'm going to start with my tank setup and we'll go from there. These fish that I have in here, I am only breeding with. So they're not in like a display tank or anything like that. So if you are looking to keep these guys in a display tank, I highly recommend doing a highly planted tank. They really find that the perfect environment. They are relaxed in it and feel most at home. So if you are going to do that, highly recommend planning out this tank. You can see that this tank is very, very aged. The filter gives away the fact that I haven't cleaned it for a while. But alas, we'll press on. So I've got these guys currently breeding in with some emerald rasboras. Now the emerald rasboras won't come out. You won't see them. If they do, it's a special day because they don't, as soon as they see anything in front, oh, actually, I lied to you. It's a special day. There is an emerald rasbora in this shot. Comment if you can see it. I am breeding them with emerald rasboras. Both of these different species of fish are successfully breeding together. So as you can see, I actually have a little egg trap in the middle there. And I also have my mops on the side. The forktail blue eyes are the ones that'll breed in the mops, and that's what we're talking about today. My emerald rasboras breed very, very similar to the CPDs. In fact, almost exactly the same. So if you are interested in breeding emerald rasboras, I would recommend going back and checking out my how to breed CPD video, because that will give you all the tips and tricks on how to do that. The tank is a 2 foot by 1 foot, roughly 65 to 70 litres, which is about a 20-gallon tank. I keep my room heated, so the tank is sitting at 24 degrees Celsius or 77 degrees Fahrenheit. Other from that, that's pretty much it. I've added a couple of plants in there, mostly just to grow out. I've got some cryptocorum in the corner there, and I obviously had a stem plant in there as well that I've either ripped out or it passed away. I do get a little bit of algae in this tank because there isn't much going on for the nutrients to go anywhere. But it's really easy just to scrape off. There's no problems. The sponge filter does its job. It doesn't need much more than that, as these guys don't produce a massive bio load. As you can see, they're all quite chill, swimming around. So you don't need a massive tank to breed these guys. Really just enough space for them to explore and move around. If you are just wanting to keep them, and you can breed them in a planted tank as well, but if you are just wanting to keep them as a school, I recommend planning out your tank quite thoroughly, as they do enjoy that. So I'm breeding them. I'm having a really good time breeding them, and I want to see what's going on. And this is working really, really well for me. I've had some really, really good success. I've got a really good ratio in this tank. Currently, I have 2 males and 6 females. I started off with 3 fish. I started off with 1 male and 2 females. I would recommend doing, for every male, having the 2 females. Very, very similar to guppies in that respect. It just makes the male Because they are very active, it allows him to show off to 2 different females. If you want your male to look more colorful, add another male, as they will like spar and color up more to impress the females more when they have competition. But all the fish in here, bar from the 3 that I originally purchased, are fish that I have bred, and they're like the first batch of fish. I've had, like I said, I've had success from the get-go with these guys, and I'd recommend them to everyone because they are quite easy and fun to do. You can tell the difference between the 2 different sexes, as the male is much more colorful than your female. Now they both have the yellow fins. He also has sort of like a more of a yellow belly than the girls. The girls also are they are a little bit more rounded, so you can tell that their stomachs are a little bit more full, of course with eggs, and the male is just more colorful, which is usually the way it goes in the animal kingdom. So once you have your tank set up and you've got your ratio of fish in there, let's talk about adding those spawning mops that you can see on the side. Okay, I've got a couple of different spawning mops here. For my blue eye forktails, I like to use the different colored yarn with a floater on top. So this floater is just a slice of a pool noodle, nice and easy, cheap, no worries. And I've just tied it on. This spawning mop is all one color. However, I have found in, doing different fish and experiments that the different colors that simulate different, like the plants, that looks a little bit more natural, they tend to work a little bit better. I have had success with the simple 1 color ones as well, but if you are struggling and you've got one that's in there that's just 1 color green and you're not getting a lot of eggs, try mixing it up with a little bit of different greens in there, see if you can get a bit more of a natural look. You can see in the tank that they just float. Now something that is really important, that I think is really important, is that my mops are from the top of the waterline all the way down to the sand. I found that these fish, some of them have different areas in the tank where they like to spawn. The furcatus are really good in that way that they always tend to spawn sort of around here. I have found with other rainbows, they do like to spawn sometimes on the gravel or up really high. These are really easy to make. All this is like making a tassel. So just making a string, wrapping it around, and then cutting the end to make it all like a cousin it sort of situation. And then I just tie it onto this little pool noodle. So super easy. You can see how I've done it there. It's not pretty, it just is what it is. We've added 2 in. The females will pick and choose where they want to go, and the male will just swim between them. And besides 2 mops, more areas to pick eggs from. So what they do is they will deposit their eggs onto the yarn, and because the eggs are sticky, they will stay there. You can simply just pull the spawning mop out. You can wring it out, the eggs will be okay in the yarn, and just find them, remove them, and pop them into a little hatchery. These guys will spawn every day. So we tend to go through the mops every day. Sometimes we'll go through it every second day. It's not a big deal, but we just use our fingers to gently remove them and place them into our hatching containers. Alternatively, you could potentially take the whole mop and pop it into another tank and just replace that mop for the next day. But we just find it, I just find it a little bit easier to do it this way. So we can keep track of which eggs are hatching and what week it is and things like that. So this is my current little setup. Now you saw that I popped the eggs into these little containers after we picked them. Basically what I'm doing is you can see that they are numbered. I've got 1 and 2 here. They are the weeks. So what we are currently doing is putting 2 weeks worth of eggs in here and 2 weeks worth of eggs in here. And then of course, once they hatch, then they go into their Growout tanks or their fry tank at first. Which we'll move on to in just a second. These guys do take a little bit longer to hatch. So you are looking at anywhere between 7 to 15 days to hatch. This is all depending on your temperature. Now, of course, I'm keeping them in this shallow water because once they hatch, they do free swim. So they will jump to the top of the water column very, very quickly. And I just don't want them to have to swim too far without any food, of course, in these little containers. Now, to fight the bacteria and fungus, I do add methylene blue to these containers, and that is wonderful. Like it does, we never see any fungus basically. Bad eggs just go white and we just pick them out. And I change the water. So every time we take the eggs out and we pop them into their Growout tank, we just swap the water around, add new methylene blue and start the process again. I do have an air stone in each of these little containers. You can see there because I do want to have a little bit of aeration going through that water column. I have found with just about any breed, like doesn't matter what you're breeding, what eggs it is, I've found that having an air stone in their little hatchery is always helpful. So I highly recommend doing that if you have the means to. They don't actually need the light, so although I'm keeping these guys on top of the tank, they do not need that light to hatch, but of course it's helpful for us to see what's going on in there. You can also see on the top here, if I just move the camera down, I have a lid on my tank. I didn't mention this in my tank setup. Pop a lid on the tank of these fish. These fish will jump out. And make sure that the lid is quite secure, because if there is any kind of little gap anywhere, they will find that gap and they will jump out. I am not speaking from experience. It is quite a long incubation period. A lot of fish eggs hatch within 3 to 5 days. These guys do take a little bit longer. When they do hatch though, you can see them swimming up the tippy top, and that is when it's time to pull them out of that methylene blue. Methylene blue is not super healthy for fish, especially if they're fine. Like if they're not sick, then they don't really need to be in there. So I pull them out as soon as I see them free swimming and put them into fresh water. Once we have found free swimmers in our little egg hatchery, that is when I then go ahead and move them over to here. These are my little tiny fry tanks. So these tanks are only about 1 gallon. So they're very, very small. They each have a sponge filter in them and not really much else. So this is purely just to get them over that line and they're not as small and can take a bit of a wider or a larger tank to swim around in. I do this mostly so that they're not exerting loads and loads of energy while they're swimming around and I'm not feeding them all the time. Because I work full time, as you know, I can't feed them 5 times a day. I can only feed them 3 times a day. So I like to keep them sort of in close quarters so that they're not running out of calories throughout the day just by swimming around. Yeah, so every 2 weeks we'll add in 2 weeks worth of fry and then on to the next one. So there's various ways that you can feed these guys their first food. A lot of people will culture infusoria and do that and feed that basically. That works really well. That's a great food to start them off with. These tanks are quite aged, so I know that there is infusoria within these tanks, so I don't actually culture it myself. But what I do is feed them a mixture of 2 different foods. We're gonna start off, I'm gonna show you with these guys here because they are our newest batch of free swimmers. So they are the smallest ones that I have at the moment. So the first thing that I'd recommend that you get your hands on if you do have small fry like this, or if you're doing these guys, is the New Life Spectrum gel mix. Now this is a gel food, so you can actually mix it up and make little gel cubes out of it. But if you don't, it is very, very fine powder. So what we do is I get myself a paintbrush. Now this paintbrush has never been used except for in here. You can see that it's got methylene blue stains on it. All I do is dip it in like that and it gives me a nice coating on the bristles and I just tap it in on the top there. You can see that the fish are already going for it. The next thing that I feed them now, because these are little baby fish and their brains are not very big, they don't always know what to eat, and if it doesn't move, they won't eat it. And that is definitely something that can happen. So the next thing that I would recommend is either banana worms or micro worms. I have a video on this too. If you guys don't know how to culture these, I highly recommend checking out that video. Super easy to culture. I culture in mashed potato. Works like a dream. And it cultures hundreds and thousands and millions of worms. And all I do is scrape some off the side, like so. Get a little goop on that paintbrush. Again, in there. Now, micro worms and banana worms, I think, are one of the best foods out there for fry if they are too small to eat brine shrimp. What these guys do is that they will wiggle around in the water column for up to 11 hours or even more. Usually they won't live for 11 hours. The fish will eat them before then. But what is great about that is that you can put a nice big dollop of that in the morning, go to work for 8 hours, and then come on home and feed them again. And these babies have full tummies all day. Awesome. Love this food. It has actually, I think when I first started culturing this food, it like elevated my fish keeping because I was able to keep those fish full for longer, which is what the problem was 99% of the time when I was first starting to breed fish. I couldn't keep them alive because I was going to work every day and they were starving during the day. Especially if you're looking to breed like fish like angels or rams. Amazing food. Highly recommend. Go watch my other video. Start your own cultures. Finish this video first, that'd be really cool, thank you. So they are gonna put on quite a bit of size after a few weeks. This is 2 to 3 weeks in, so they're still quite small. You can see they've got little fat bellies. Now at this size, this is when they start accepting brine shrimp. Now what I will do is feed brine in this tank for another week or so till they get to a little bit larger. I just want them to be nice and strong before I pop them in a 2-foot or even a 4-foot tank, depending on how many I'm growing out at once. They will be strong enough to handle that and be completely fine. Now I have also raised these fish from start to finish in a 2-foot. However, I've had more casualties than I have had in here. Now you don't have to do it this way. I wanted to really talk about that, is that the way that I breed these fish is not the only way. There are so many ways, and you do it your way and the way that suits you the best, because that's, if it suits you and it's working for you, do it that way. So once these guys are ready, I will then go ahead and pop them in a 2-foot where I will continue to feed brine basically for the rest of their little lives. Now, the batch before this, which are 2 weeks younger, I will get to this point, and once I feel like they're okay, I will pop them together depending on the size. As long as the fish that you are putting together cannot eat each other, you should be all right. So I'm going to show you a batch in a 2-foot. I've got them in my split 4-foot actually. So it is technically a 2-foot. This batch here, this is 2 batches in one, because the size difference was not horrific and I knew that they wouldn't eat each other. But these guys are getting brine twice a day, so I'm feeding them brine in the morning and then brine at night time before lights off, and then I'm also feeding them worms and dry like when I get home from work, so about 3 in the afternoon. So they're getting 3 times a day food. Oh, that's a red, that's amazing. That's not a yellow, a blue-eyed forktail, that is a neon red rainbow, which is cool. Yes, so these guys are getting their food 3 times a day, twice a day of brine, once a day on dry and worms. Because like these guys will eat worms their whole life. Like there's no issue with, like you can feed guppies and these guys worms for their dinner. Like it's totally fine. They will eat it, they will enjoy it. There isn't heaps of nutrients in your micro worms and your banana worms. So like I wouldn't recommend that as like a food to condition fish. But as far as keeping fry alive and healthy, it's a great food. Also, just quickly, look at my angels, look at them go. These guys are growing out. I did actually just drop off some red devils at the fish room in Hallam, so highly recommend going down there and getting yourself some. I also dropped off some super red plecos. Hell yeah. So if you are after my fish and you want some of them, they are currently available at the fish room in Hallam. Woo! These guys will stay in this tank until probably hitting around the 2 centimeter mark. I like to do that because the adults are full size, so they are at the 4 centimeter mark, and I'm scared that they're gonna bully them and eat them and do all kinds of nasty things. So I wanna get them up a little bit more robust before I move them on. Once we do get to that point, this is where I either will add them back into my colony or I will sell them on. So as you can see in here, that's the male there, you can see that small female. So that one was one of my little babies. Now they are hitting the 3 centimeter mark, but I introduced them in here at 2 centimeters. By that point, they are sellable size because you can tell what sex they are. They are either female or male. And they are also of breeding age, which is great because you want to be able to start breeding them. So they will start breeding once they hit 2 to 2.5 centimeters. It's roughly the time. Now, these are rainbow fish. That is something to keep in mind. They do take a long time to grow out. So throughout the steps that I have shown you, you are looking at 3 to 4 months of grow out time, depending on how much you feed, how much you water change, of course. Like I do daily water changes of 10% to most of my grow out tanks. So that is very important if you are wanting to grow these fish out very, very quickly. So that is how I breed the forktail blue eyes or the Pseudomugil furcatus. Like I said before, I love this fish. I recommend it to any beginners as well. They are super, super fun. They are beautiful. They are active. They love to eat. They love to swim around and they're not shy. So definitely a great fish. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments how you guys are breeding, if you're breeding them or anything else that you might be breeding. Let me know if you have any questions or anything like that, or if you want me to make a video on something in particular, because I'm just going to keep making videos, and if you have questions and I can answer them, I'm more than happy to help out. All right, that's it guys. I guess I'll catch you on the next one.